Western propaganda has been lying to you about porn, lust, and sexual freedom. And if you're Muslim, you have felt this contradiction for a very long time, even if you've never had the words for it. You were told porn is normal, masturbation is healthy, being constantly exposed to sexual imagery is just part of modern life. At the same time, you were told Islam is too strict. Muslims are obsessed with morality, lowering the gaze, modesty, and limits are outdated ideas that hold people back. So one side, the West, presents itself as morally advanced, liberated, enlightened, and on the other side, Islam is framed as restrictive, backward, dangerous. Now here's the question I want you to ask honestly. If porn, masturbation, and constant stimulation were harmless, then why is porn addiction exploding? Why are men constantly numb? Why are relationships collapsing? And why did one of the largest scandals in modern history happen the way it did? Because when the Epstein files came out, something was exposed that went far beyond just one man. They exposed how loudly morality is preached and how quietly it disappears when accountability becomes inconvenient. And what stood out to many Muslims is not just what was revealed, but actually the silence around what was being revealed. For years, Muslims have been demonized in Western media. Entire populations are treated as suspects. Cultures are blamed collectively. Yet, when the Epstein saga was surfaced, when something truly horrific was uncovered, the same instinct to moralize vanished. No deeper cultural critique. No serious questioning of the ideology that produced this. Why? Because if the problem is framed honestly, the spotlight turns inward. Because if you admit that unrestrained lust is the engine, then the story stops being convenient. And this is where porn enters the picture directly. Because porn is not just a private habit, something you do in isolation. No, it's actually a training ground of that same system. Porn doesn't exist in isolation. It exists inside of a culture that normalizes sexual exposure from a young age. Ads, movies, music, social media. Sexual imagery is not occasional. It is constant. And the human brain adapts to it. And this is not about religion. This is about biology. When you repeatedly stimulate the brain with sexual content, the nervous system recalibrates. And what once felt stimulating becomes normal. And what felt normal becomes very dull. And what once felt forbidden stops registering as forbidden at all. And this is how overstimulation works. The brain does not say, I'm satisfied, I'm done. No, it says, I want more. Increase the intensity. That's why porn escalates. Because novelty is required to trigger the same response. And masturbation reinforces this loop. It teaches the nervous system that relief comes without responsibility, that stimulation is enough, so that actual connections become harder to get. Real intimacy will feel weaker. Real women will feel less stimulating than the endless novelty. And then the people act shocked when desire doesn't behave the way they were promised it would. Now here's where the Western advice completely fails you. Instead of questioning the system, it blames the individual. You are told that you have an addiction, that you have a permanent weakness, you have a lifelong vulnerability, and you're told to fight against this, which means that your entire relationship with lust becomes war. You wake up scanning your mind, monitoring your thoughts, and checking for triggers. And when you live like that, lust never leaves center stage, because you don't constantly monitor things that don't matter to you. Resistance does not remove your desire, it just delays it. And as long as you believe that desire has power over you, it will feel powerful. Then you are told to manage it. Blockers, filters, avoidance. Without realizing it, you teach your brain that porn is actually valuable, because you don't build systems around things that are meaningless. You build systems around things that you believe are tempting, powerful, and important. And this is why many men stay stuck for years. Not because they're weak, but because this model keeps porn valuable at the belief level. That's why when I first start with a client, the first thing I have to do is rewire all the old beliefs and completely dismantle them and start the process of rebirthing their mind from the beginning. And if that sounds appealing to you, you can book a free discovery call with the link in the description. Here's where the bigger hypocrisy shows itself. The culture that told you that porn is normal now tells you that porn is your own personal failure. The culture that sexualized everything and have objectified women for nothing but profit now tells you to manage the consequences quietly. That is why the Epstein files matter as a study case. Because Epstein wasn't an accident. He was the endpoint of all the systems that crossed all lustful limits and called it freedom. People ask, how does a human being even get there? What heart, mind or soul would do such discriminating acts? The answer is simple. They were trained. They lived in a system that removed ceilings from desire, replaced limits with justification. And Islam stands in opposition to that system. In recent Epstein Files drama, there was something truly remarkable that got revealed, which is a document for a wire transfer from Jeffrey Epstein's foundation bank account. It was allegedly labeled Baal. This gives me goosebumps every time I look at it, because our Quran revelation had a verse from over 1400 years ago that says, "Do you call upon Baal and leave the best of creators? You left the original fitra, the manual designed for your optimal life, and you went to call upon Baal." For those who don't understand, Baal was an idol to the people of the book around Prophet Musa's, peace be upon him, time. And Baal is not ancient history. Baal is what happens whenever desire is placed above accountability, whenever appetite is treated as sacred, whenever limits are framed as oppression, when desire becomes the authority, everything else bends. Morals bend, boundaries bend, even conscious, it bends. The Quran does not need to predict modern events to be relevant. It exposes patterns. When I say that porn is a training ground, I want you to really sit with that. Training doesn't care about your intentions. Training doesn't ask whether you're religious. Training only responds to repetition. Every scroll teaches your brain what to look for. Every indulgence teaches your nervous system what to crave. Every secret moment trains you to associate relief with isolation instead of responsibility. And that is why lowering the gaze is not a moral aesthetic, it's a neurological hygiene. The eyes, they are not passive, they are inputs. And what enters the eyes becomes expectation. And expectation becomes desire. Desire becomes direction. And that's why Islam doesn't fight the collapse at the end. It blocks the path in the first step already. Because once that brain is trained on novelty, escalation is not a question of if, but rather of when. I want to be very clear about something. This is not a theory. I've worked with men who did everything Western recovery tells you to do. Blockers, accountability, streaks, fear-based motivation, and shame-based motivation. And they stayed stuck in the same cycle, not because they didn't try hard enough, but because the belief that made porn valuable was never touched. When we dismantled that belief, and when the benefit of porn collapsed, something strange happened. The fight stopped. The obsession faded. The vigilance disappeared. And that is what my program is built around. Not discipline, not willpower, not trying harder, but a structured dismantling of the belief that feed lust. Porn is not just a habit, it is an education. It educates your nervous system to chase stimulation. It educates your heart to prefer appetite over meaning. And it educates your eyes to consume instead of to connect. Western propaganda tells you this is freedom. Islam tells you this is slavery. And the outcomes of the last couple of days prove which one is telling the truth. If you are tired of managing the problem, if you are tired fighting yourself, if you're tired of feeling like lust owns you, it owns your attention, your energy, your relationship with Allah Ta'ala, then stop trying to win inside of a system designed to keep you trapped. Choose a different plan. If you want to run faster towards removing the cravings you have in the first place, I'll leave you a link in the description where you can book a one-on-one discovery call with me completely for free, and worst case scenario, you actually walk out of the call with a strategy you can implement from today. Apply now in the first link under this video. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.